Hello everyone, my name is Steve Samuel from Design Visionaries, and today I have a command, a very powerful command called the contour rib. There's lots of times when I talk about a command and how powerful it is. I don't ever think I've ever taught you anything that wasn't powerful. And as you can see, a contour rib is ribs that can be created on a surface that are perpendicular to the surface. And in this little example, I've made this kind of aerospace-y, surfacey thing, and I've put a hexagonal pattern of ribs on it, and I'm about to show you now how to do a model like this. So I'm going to, as per usual, start with a model from scratch, and I'm going to start off with a conic, actually. I like conics. They're really beautiful in general. They have, they remind me of a lot of the work that Antoni Gaudi did. And to find the conic, you can select right there. It's a 3-point experience, 1, 2, 3. There's the conic. I prefer an RHO of 0.6. It's just a preference. And there's how I start this thing. I'm now going to put some constraints on it and some dimensions. For example, I'm going to put a dimension across there, which is 10 inches. I'm going to put constraints, like a horizontal constraint between that point and that point, between that point and that point, so it starts horizontally. Cool. I'm going to put another dimension between here and here. That's 5. That centers it very nicely, but it doesn't center the focal point of the constraint or of the conic, in which case I need to, let's say, double click on this dimension and make it 0. You're probably wondering, why don't I just use a point on curve constraint? And that seems to not work. Then I'm going to put a point entity right there. And that point entity, however, is going to be used, I'm going to use a point on curve, pop it up like that. And I'm going to use another point on curve where that point goes on the conic, and then that gives me a very nice and convenient way to grab the conic and put a little point entity on there. I'm going to put 15 inches there, and for reasons that will become very obvious. Now wait a second, I would like this a little bit more bulbous. I'm going to put a 0.3 there and put this little point on curve back. There we go. It's a little bit more bulbous. 0.3. Okay, and for reasons that are going to become obvious in just a moment, I'm going to put a line segment out here that bisects it. Terrific. So I've got this conic in here. It's got a 0.3 RHO. It's got a little point entity there. It's got a line that goes through it. And the very next thing is to create another sketch on a orthogonal plane, this plane right here, and that sketch is going to be a simple arc, just like this. There we go. And that arc is dimensioned from here to the tangency, let's say. Let's call it a good 4 inches, and we're going to put on a little tail that goes out like this, and that tail has to be tangent. It's a tangent tail, because that tail is going to serve a specific purpose. It's going to help us to create the surface. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is go in and do a sweep along a guide. I'm going to select just this little single piece of the curve, and I'm going to select the guide curve. Now I'm going to put on the stop at intersection, because I want to select this amount of it, and I want to select that amount of it separately. And you'll see why I did that in just a moment. Actually, it didn't make a seam that I wanted to, so I'm going to Control Z it, and I'm going to do another sweep along guide, and I'm going to select this little segment, and I'm going to select with stop at intersection on. I'm going to select this little bit and say apply, and then I'm going to select this edge and this little bit and say OK. So now I've got two ribbons that are tangent to that arc surface, and now I can go ahead and create a through curve mesh surface. Through curve mesh. Through curve mesh surface is one of my favorite surfaces because we have primary curves and cross curves, and one of the primary curves can be a single point entity like that. And then I'm going to add new primary curve, and I'm just going to do this arc, just that bit of it. I'm going to leave out the lines. That's good. Then I'm going to do cross curves. My cross curves will be one here, but this has to be stop at intersection, so it only gets that portion of it. And then I do add new cross section curve, and I do this one. Beautiful. Now, finally, I'm going to use tangency constraints for my end sections. My first cross section, or my first section tangency, will be established by this plane here, and my second by that plane there. And so in all of that, I get a nice little surface that has a bit of a nose on it. And I'm going to now go into Home, More, Delete, Body, and I want to delete these little ribbons. I don't need them anymore. That's cool. And then the next thing I want to do is make a surface, make a solid out of this thing. And I forgot what I should have done is put a little line segment that went from there to there. We're going to need that in a second because I want to do bounded planes and a so. So I go to, no pun intended, so I go to surface and then bounded plane, where it is bounded plane. I'm going to select this curve here and that curve there and apply. Oh, and that curve there and apply. I'm going to take this off of stop at intersection and select the conic and the line and say okay. Then I'm going to do so, and I'm going to sew these into a solid, say okay, great. And then the next thing I do is put a datum plane that is parallel to the XY plane, and it hovers above by an arbitrary amount. Say okay, good. And then I'm going to create a sketch on that plane for reasons, again, that will become obvious in a second. There's my sketch. Next, I'm going to put a polygon right there. And that polygon is going to be exactly 1.5 high. 1.5. 1.5. And as a matter of fact, that's P8 right there. And I'm going to call it AA. So I'm going to be referring to that dimension a little bit later. It's dimension AA now. And I'm going to put a little dimension here. That's 0.52. All right, so good. So that is the curve. It's right in the center because I selected the little center point and I put it on the line from the other sketch. And that's hovering above the surface of my my surface. Next, I want to do a pattern geometry. Pattern geometry is fantastic because you can use it to pattern all sorts of things. And in this case, I want to pattern the sketch. So I've got to change my filter there. And actually, it's not really the sketch as much as it is these curves here. I'm going to be patterning them. And the way I'm going to do it is a rectangular pattern or a linear pattern. And I'm going to specify direction 1 as in the basic x-axis. And I'm going to put AA, that was that 1.5. And I'm also going to make that symmetric. And I'm going to put, the pitch distance is AA, and the count is 2. So it's going out that way. Next I'm going to do direction number 2. Direction number 2 is the y-axis, like this. And that also is going to be a pitch distance of AA. And I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them. So 6. And this one right here actually is going to be 3. I'm going to do a 3 by 6 pattern. Now that does not look like a honeycomb. And the reason why is because I have to stagger them, and I have to stagger them just right. So I'm going to go to the pattern settings, and right here I'm going to stagger direction 2. There you go, direction 2. And as you can see, I've got little gaps here, and so what I need to do is adjust my pitch distance right there, and I need to adjust it ever so slightly. So I'm going to multiply AA times the cosine of 30 degrees. Just like that. Oh, I'm sorry, that's the wrong one. This one's supposed to be AA. It's this one is what I have to do. I've got to multiply it by the cosine of 30 degrees. And now it comes together nice and tight, see? Say okay. Oh, I love math, don't you? So, I didn't always. I didn't love math when I didn't have a really good application that really gave me, excitement. But then I had this teacher. Her name was Zelda Juice, and she was fabulous. And she gave me a love of this math, and so did my physics teacher. So I was very, very lucky to go to Samuel J. Tilden High School. And there's my pattern. And what I want to do is plaster this pattern onto the surface. And so that is a project operation. I'm going to select all the curves, and I'm going to select the object I'm going to project to, and I'm going to try along face normals. How's that work? Nah, that doesn't look very good because it's foreshortening. So I'm just going to do along a vector, and I'll do that. And that's distorting on this end, isn't it? So let's have a little fun. Let's do another kind of projection. I will create a sketch on the XY plane. All right. And that sketch is going to look like this, where it touches that plane. No, actually, I want it to be uniform offset from this edge right here. So I'm going to do an offset from that edge there. And that's going to do that. And I want that to touch, which should be, let's call it 1.7. Okay, so that's going to touch that. Say okay. Cool. So that's just a sketch. Now, I'm going to take a piece of that sketch, the arc piece, and I'm going to extrude it, single curve, that arc. That is not an arc. Control Z. It's got to be an arc. It's got to be a pure arc. So as a matter of fact, let's bring this back. There is a method to my madness. You'll see what it is in just a second. Let's do that, and let's do a circle that emanates from there and has a tangency to there. Or, bear with me. Oh yeah, we can't do it because of the way that was created. Hold on here. We've got to get it to touch that. And in order to do that, we'll just have to adjust this plane. So this is 13.7. Let's give it a number that we can really keep track of. So let's delete this. Delete. Thank you. Let's put a dimension from here to there, to the apex, there. Let's make it something definite, like 6 or 5.5. 5.75. Okay, close enough. 5.75. Let's finish that out. All right, and then we're going to make sure that the offset distance is 5.75 on this datum plane. 5.75. So they are perfectly aligned now. And now I'm going to take that little curve and I'm going to extrude it in this direction, and I'm going to do a Boolean none, like that, and I'm going to make sure that it is a sheet body, sheet, There you go. Cool. And so now I can wrap it onto this surface, and then it will make the projection a lot more logical. So in order to proceed, I go to curve, and I go to the wrap curves. Okay. It says select the curves to wrap. I'm going to grab all of these like this, and select the face on which you are wrapping, and select the datum plane on which you have defined those flat curves. So there you go. I can now hide this. I can hide this. There we go. Cool. So now I want to project this inward, and I have some very nice projection operations. I may need a line that goes all the way through this, so I'm going to Control-Shift-K and bring back that sketch there. And this line is where I want to project to. And so the next thing I do is go to the surface. I do the project again. Where'd it go? Curve, rather. Project. Right there, project. I'm going to grab the curves. It's on infer curve, so it's selecting them all. I'm going to select the object to project to, and this time I'm going to project toward a line. My line is going to be that, and that looks terrible. That looks terrible. Okay, how about a long face normals? Ah, there we go. So long face normals looks much better now. Still not exactly what I want. And finally, let's do a long vector. Ah, okay. Close enough. All right, Control B. Now, if I was a little bit more serious, I would bring this whole thing down. I would make the arc closer to the shape, and then it wouldn't foreshorten quite as much. Or I would project to a line that was actually lower. Actually, let me try that. Let's Control Z that. And let us put a line segment on the orthogonal plane, and let's make the line segment down here. Okay? So now we can adjust that project along a line business, and we can get exactly what we wanted. So now we go back to curve, back to project, select the curves to project. There they are. Select the surface on which we are projecting, go to toward line, select the line here, pray a little, say okay. All right, and if we don't like it, we can move the line in a downward position or downward direction. Let's do Control B here. Get rid of all of that. Okay, and then finally, let's take this line and let's push it down here until we get it to look like we want. Okay, that's better. And now we can custom adjust. There we go. Much nicer. Okay, so now finally we go to the home, more, and there's a command called contour rib. Contour rib. I'm going to make ribs that are 0.125 thick and 0.3 high, and all I do here is select the face that is going to be perpendicular to the ribs. I select all the curves, infer curves, that are going to be in the center of each rib, and I pray a little bit, and I wait a little bit, and it's thinking and cranking, and so on and so forth. This is the exciting part of the demo, because if this doesn't work, then I have to start from scratch. But it's going to take a little time because it's doing a lot in the background, and there you have it. Look at that. You have ribs that are perpendicular to the surface and aligned on all of those little curves that I've done. It gave me a nice preview. Now it's actually creating the geometry. There it goes. Finally, I'm going to shell this out like this. Say okay. I'm going to unite it all together like that. Say okay, and I'm going to say Control W. and get rid of the points, the datum planes, the coordinate systems, the curves and sketches. And that is a beautiful surface with a rib structure on it. I'm going to finish up by doing a very nice true shading editor. True shading editor is so effortless. And there you have it. So there's lots of aerospace type surfaces that have honeycombs on them of all sorts. And if you have a mat that has a hexagonal pattern and you bend that, you're going to get ribs that are perpendicular to the surface. That was fun. So glad to share that with you. Again, my name is Steve Samuel from Design Visionaries, and I really do appreciate the privilege of creating these things. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, tell a friend, help us out, and have a wonderful day. Thank you.